Welcome to all those that are with us for the Shir and Likutei Halachos this morning. Orach Chaim, Chelek Gimel, Hilchos Purim, Halacha Hey, towards the end of paragraph Aleph. We left off by the words V'zehu Vayehi Yodov Emuna. This chapter of Likutei Halachos is based on chapter 55 in Likutei Moharan, where Rabbeinu Zal speaks about seeing the downfall of our enemies. V'zehu Vayehi Yodov Emuna. We find that when Moshe Rabbeinu is doing battle against Amalek, the pasuk says that his hands were outstretched, and Targumoi, the Targum says, Prison Bitzloi, outstretched in prayer. Ki ho'ikar hu hatfila. The most important thing is tefillah, shehi bechinas emuna, shetzrichin lechazek atzmoi mo'oid, lehispalel Hashem yisborach. When a person is encountering this kind of situation, where it looks like there's injustice, Hashem is treating the Rishon, the wicked people, well, and righteous people are suffering, a person needs to strengthen out themselves in praying to Hashem, v'livli lihiyois beliboy akmimis chas v'shon, and not to allow any crookedness to develop in my heart, meaning chas v'shon, any negative feelings towards Hashem, any doubts about Hashem's justice, v'livli laharer achar Hashem yisborach, and not to chas v'shon think any negative thoughts about Hashem, bo'es sharoya hatzlocha sarosha, at a time when we're witnessing the success of evil people. Kimavoyer b'mayim ranal, as Rabbeinu Zal explains over there in chapter 55 in Likutei Moharan. V'chol zeh nase al yidei bechinas hayad, and all of this is accomplished, Rabbeinu Zal says there, through the hand. Al yidei she'oiches b'mishpat yodoi, by holding on to the mishpat. V'zehu, and this is why you'll note, the pasuk says there, in terms of how Hashem is doing battle against Amalek, the pasuk says, Ki yod al keis ka. The hand is upon the throne of Hashem. She'ochaz beyodoi bechinas kisois lenishpat. That Kaviochel Hashem is holding in his hand the throne of justice. And this is exactly how Hashem is doing battle against Amalek. V'alkein, and this is why the Gemara points out, case choser, v'Hashem choser. The word case is actually supposed to be the word kisei. Kisei means throne, and yet the word is missing a letter. The word ka is half of Hashem's name. The full name is Yud Kei Vav Kei. So the throne is lacking, and the name of Hashem is lacking. Ki kisois lemishpot choser achshav. Because the throne of justice is incomplete right now. V'gam bechinas pnei Hashem mustar. And in addition, the face of Hashem is hidden by this seeming injustice. V'alkein Hashem choser. And this is why the pasuk presents the name of Hashem lacking. It's missing the other half. Vayidei biatzmoi milchom al Hashem b'Amalek. And it's by Kaviochel Hashem withholding the mishpat and hiding his face, hiding his presence. This is how Hashem is doing battle against Amalek. We touched on the topic of Ra'ayin in the previous shir, that the Rishoim, Amalek, they look with an evil eye on other people, whereas the Tzadikim are referred to as Toivayin, or Ayin Toiv, a good eye, looking favorably at people. Paragraph Beis, Ki Amalek hu klolius ho'ayin umois. Amalek is a composite of all 70 nations. V'ha'umois bechlal heim bebechinas ra'ayin. And all 70 nations on a general level are associated with ra'ayin, a bad eye, an evil eye. She'eineihem ra b'Yisrael tomid. They are always looking at us, the Jewish people, with a negative eye, with jealousy, with envy, with resentment, with negative feelings. Ki heim ayin umois, because they are 70 nations and 70 is the number ayin, the word ayin. Ki shorosham mebechinas ra'ayin, because they are rooted in this aspect of ra'ayin. Va'amalek hu klolius hora'ayin, and Amalek is a composite of the full spectrum of ra'ayin, ki hu klolius ha'ayin umas, because he's a composite of all 70 nations. Ve'ikar hachnoas hora'ayin hu alidei Eretz Yisrael, and Rabbeinu Zal writes over there in Likutim Ram that in order to defeat this ra'ayin, we need Eretz Yisrael, shehu bechinas Binyamin, which is associated specifically with Binyamin, who was the only one of the 12 tribes who was born in Eretz Yisrael. V'alkein nitztave shol hamelech lahakois es Amalek ulachrisoi, and this will explain why the first tzaddik who was instructed by Hashem to wipe out Amalek completely was Shol HaMelech, King Saul. Ki Shol mizera Binyamin, because Shol HaMelech comes from Shevet Binyamin, the tribe of Binyamin. V'oz hayu Yisrael beretz Yisrael. And during the time of Shol HaMelech, the Jews were already in Eretz Yisrael. Not like during the time of Moshe Rabbeinu when we were in the desert. Not like during the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, when Hashem did not command Moshe Rabbeinu to wipe out Amalek completely, but rather to give him a strong blow. And then during the time of Shol HaMelech, that was the prime time, the opportunity was available to erase Amalek completely. Ach Shol Tobazeh. However, Shol made a mistake regarding this. Vehishir es Hagag. He allowed the king of Amalek to remain alive. Now Rav Nosson Zal explains. Ki machmashet tzrichin leyashev atzmoi heitev im yesh lo koyach lamoid neged haroshav v'horayin hazeh. A person has to think it over very carefully to decide whether the person is capable of standing up to this Rasha, to this power of Ra'ayin. Ki lav kol echad yochol lamoid negdoi, because not every person and not even every tzaddik is qualified and capable to stand up to Amalek. Bifrat neged, in general to the Sitra Achra, Bifrat neged Amalek, especially when we're talking about going up against Amalek, shehu klolius hora shel kol hora'ayin shaboilam, who is a composite of all the evil, of all the ra'ayin in the entire world. And Rabbeinu Zal explained over there in Likutim Ram that there are times when we have to be malamed schus, even on a Rasha, kedei lehinotzel mira'enoi, in order to be saved from being harmed by his ra'ayin. V'alkein Ta'o Shol, and this is why Shol HaMelech made a mistake. Vayorev Banachal. The pasuk says there when he was going out to do battle against Amalek, it says Vayorev Banachal, and Rashi over there quotes the Gemara which says V'don kal v'chomer beto'us, that David HaMelech came up with a mistaken type of logic to the limedol of schus, to be malamed schus on Agag and on the animals of Amalek, v'hishir es Agag, and he allowed Agag to remain alive. The Gemara says there that the word banachal refers to the mitzvah of egla arufa. We know there's a mitzvah in the Torah that if we find a person dead in the forest or in another place and we don't know who killed him, there's no indication. So the people that live in the city closest to that area, the leaders, must bring a special type of sacrifice called an egla arufa. And it says they go down to the nachal, they go down to a place, a low place where there's a stream, and there they perform a certain ceremony. So the Gemara says that Shol HaMelech, when he was about to engage Amalek in battle, he was reminded of this story of egla arufa, and he thought, imagine, if one person is dead, and we don't know who he is, we don't know who killed him, we have to go through this major process of egla arufa, etc. Why should we murder these animals here, the animals of Amalek, who certainly they didn't do any wrong? And the Gemara goes into this, I believe, in the Gemara Saita, page 14. Ube'emes ta'obozeh. And in actuality, Shaul HaMelech was mistaken regarding this. As we find afterwards that Shmuel HaNavi reprimanded him. And he said to Shaul HaMelech, Haloyim kotoin ato beinecha. If you are small in your own eyes, if you consider yourself not such a great person, and you allowed yourself to follow the pressure that was put on you by the Jews, who didn't want to kill the animals of Amalek at the time, Roish Shiftei Yisrael ato, you are a leader of the tribes of Klal Yisrael, and you should be making the decision. You shouldn't be influenced by the mistaken pressure that's being put on you by the others. Because this was the essence of the mistake of Shaul HaMelech, that he was too small in his own eyes. He was humble in an improper way. It seemed to him that he wasn't strong enough at the time to be able to stand up to Agag, to defeat Agag, and to destroy Amalek completely. But the truth was that Shaul HaMelech did have the power at that time to stand up to Agag and the whole nation of Amalek, to wipe them out completely. Because Shaul HaMelech was a descendant of Binyamin, Shenoilad Eretz Yisrael, who was born in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore he had that power of Eretz Yisrael, which is an incredible power that enables the tzaddik to bring about the downfall of the Rasha. V'gam kvar hoyu kol Yisrael al admosam be'Eretz Yisrael. And not only he, but the entire Jewish nation at that time was already living in Eretz Yisrael. V'alkein hoyo yochel oz lahachrisei legamri. And therefore, Shaul HaMelech could have wiped out Amalek completely at the time. Ki ikar mapolosoi hualidei Eretz Yisrael kanal. Because as Rabbeinu Zal says in the beginning of that chapter in Kutim Aram, that the downfall of the Rishonim is brought about through the power of Eretz Yisrael. And Shaul HaMelech had that power going for him. Before we continue, I want to make mention of one very important line in middle of this paragraph, in middle of paragraph Beis, where Rab Nasan writes, Ki machma shetzrichen liyashev atzmoi heitev. The word liyashev, the term liyashev atzmoi heitev means to think it over very clearly. But in Breslov Torah, the word liyashev atzmoi also means hispoidedus, to discuss it with Hashem, to pray to Hashem. I heard this from many of the Zakenim of Breslov, that in the Sefer Sipurei Maisius, especially, the 13 special stories which Rabbeinu Zal told, there are many times in the story there where a tzaddik has to make an important decision. And it says there, Unerhot sich meyashev geven, and he thought it over carefully. And the Ziknei Breslov all stressed that the term Yishuv Hadas, as it's used in Breslov, refers especially to hisboidedus. It's not just thinking, but it means talking it over with Hashem, presenting to Hashem all sides of the situation, and pleading with Hashem, begging Hashem for guidance, for advice, that Hashem should direct me. Like David HaMelech says in chapter 16 in Tehillim, Ato toimich goyroli, you Hashem choose my lot for me. When I need to make a decision, you guide me and direct me, because many times, how can I know? I can't possibly know everything that I need to know to make the right decision. Paragraph Gimel. And as a result of the mistake of Shaul HaMelech in allowing Agag to remain alive for one night, Vaydezeh noilad Haman. V'alkein, and therefore, Kisha Haman HaRasha, when Haman HaRasha rose to power, Hoyso eist sora gedoyla ma'oid ma'oid. It was a terrible, terrible, dangerous crisis for Bnei Yisrael. Asher kamoyu loy nihiyasa, which there had never been such a dangerous time for Klal Yisrael prior to that, Kamuva, as is brought in Sifrei Kabbalah. Ki hoyo mizgaber bekoyach hapegam shel Shaul hamelech shehoyo mishevet Binyamin mibchinas Eretz Yisrael. Because Haman drew power from the mistake of Shaul hamelech, who came from Shevet Binyamin, from Eretz Yisrael. V'alkein hoyo hisgabrusoi moed, and therefore Haman's power was immense, very, very great. B'bchinas mashekosav Rabbeinu Sham al oig, similar to what Rabbeinu Zal writes over there in chapter 55 in Likutei Moharan regarding Oig, Melech HaBoshan, the giant Oig. Shehisgabrusoi hoyo machmas shehoyo somoch l'Eretz Yisrael. Rabbeinu Zal writes there that one of the things that made Oig such a dangerous, powerful adversary to Klal Yisrael was the fact that he was positioned right near Eretz Yisrael. V'hoyo mibnei Beiso di Avraham, and he was from the household of Avram Avinu, as we mentioned in the shir yesterday. Shehu bechinas yemin. Avram Avinu in Kabbalah always represents the right side. He's the Ish HaChesed. He's called Kohen. Kemoikein hisgaber Haman. Similarly, just like Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of Oig, so too Haman was an incredible adversary. Machmas hapegam shel Shaul, as a result of the mistake of Shaul HaMelech, shehoya bechinas Eretz Yisrael, who also represented Eretz Yisrael, in that he came from the tribe of Binyamin and he was living in Eretz Yisrael. Ubifrat shehoya mizera Amalek, and especially the fact that Haman was a descendant of Amalek, shehu klolius ha'ra'ayin, who is a composite of all the ra'ayin. V'alkein hisgaber ba'ayin ro ma'oid al Mordechai v'al kol Yisrael. And this is why Haman rose up with his evil eye, especially against Mordechai and against the entire Jewish nation. At sherotzo lahaviram legamri, to the point where he wanted to annihilate us completely. Chas v'shalom. V'alkein rotzo levatel koyach hashkolim shel Yisrael. And this is why Haman also wanted to neutralize the mitzvah of the machzis hashekel of Klal Yisrael. Kamei as it says in the Megillah, va'aseres alofim kikar kesef eshkoil. I am prepared to contribute 10,000 silver pieces, shkolim, to the treasury of Achashverosh to destroy the Jewish nation. As the Gemara points out, that this was to oppose the shkolim of Klal Yisrael. However, Hashem responded to this and said, Rasha, you evil person, kvar kodmu shikleim l'shkolecha. The mitzvah of the shkolim of the Jewish people has already preempted your shkolim. Ki hashkolim hayu kedei sheloi tishloit behem ayin hara al haminyan, k'may shapirish Rashi. Because we find Rashi points out in Chumash, in the beginning of Parshas Kisisa, where the mitzvah of machzis hashekel is mentioned, and in other places, that the reason why the Jews gave these coins were to be able to count the Jews in a manner that would not bring ayin hara upon us. This is a thing. This is something that's mentioned in maybe 10 different places in Likutei Halachos, where Rav Nasan Zal speaks about this concept that the Torah tells us that you're not supposed to count Jews. Counting Jews can chas v'shalom bring an ayin hara on us, an evil eye, and could cause chas v'shalom death or destruction or harm. So if we need to count, how do we do it? We don't count heads, we count coin. We have each person give a coin or some other way of counting, not counting the people themselves. So we see that the whole mitzvah of machzis hashekel was all about protecting us from this ra'ayin, from this ayin hara. V'hu, and Haman, rotzo lehisgaber bera'ayin. He wanted to overpower the Jewish nation using this ra'ayin. V'alkein rotzo levatel koyach hashkolim chas v'shalom. And therefore he wanted to neutralize, to eliminate the power of the shkolim. Ki hashkolim ze bechinas tzedakah. because these shkolim, these machzis hashekel that the Jews gave, was a form of charity. It was a donation to the Mishkan. Utzedakah ze bechinas toivayin. The mitzvah of charity is an expression of a good eye. Bechinas, as the pasuk says, toiv ayin hu yevoirach. A person who has a good eye, he is blessed. Ki Nasan milachmoi ladal, because he gave from his bread to the poor person. Speaking about charity. Ki ikar, and now Rav Nasan Zal makes an incredibly important point that's related to this week's parsha, Parshas Re'eh. Ki ikar hatzdaka hu lihiyos toivayin. The real effectiveness of the mitzvah of tzedakah, the real essence of the mitzvah of tzedakah, is that the person giving the charity should have a good eye, should be looking with joy and happiness at the privilege, the opportunity to be able to give and to have to whom to give to. Litein leha'oni ba'ayin yofeh, to give the contribution to the poor person with a beautiful eye, looking happily at the person, ba'ayin toiv, with a good eye. Kamashikosav, as it says in this week's parsha, Parshas Re'eh, pen yihye dovor im levavcha belial. If chas v'sholom, you'll have a negative feeling, a wrong type of feeling in your heart, v'ro'a eincha ba'achicha ha'evyoin, and you will look with a negative eye, ra'ayin, towards your brother, the poor person. The Torah says, don't do that. Don't make that terrible mistake. But rather, posoyach tiftach. Open up your hands to the poor person. Posoyach tiftach es yod chaloi. Open your hand to the poor person. A short note, a very close friend of mine, who's usually a participant in our shir, opened a charitable organization called Posoyach Tiftach. Nimtza shetzedakah hi bechinas toivayin. We see clearly from this pasuk that tzedakah, charity, is an expression of a good eye. Ayin hefech harayin, the opposite of ra'ayin. V'zeh bechinas shkolim. And this was an example of this, where the shkolim that the Jews donated to the Mishkan, shehem bechinas tzedakah, which was a form of charity. So we see that the battle of Haman against the Jewish people, his shkolim against our shkolim, are an expression of our toivayim, which means his shkolim must be an expression of ra'ayin. He's looking with envy and hate and negativity at the Jewish people. And Rav Nasan Zal now is going to show us this in an incredible way, with incredible clarity, in the next paragraph. Paragraph Dalet. Ki oz hoyo besoif hagolus Bavel. Let's understand, when did this story take place, the story of Purim? It was at the end of the Babylonian exile, Shehoyo Ayin Shana, where the Jews were in exile for 70 years. Again, Ayin, the word Ayin. Keneged bechinas hora Ayin shez Gabriel. Why were we in exile for 70 years? Because the Golus came about as a result of this power of Ra'ayin, of our enemies. Al shepogmu beretz Yisrael. And because of the fact that we did not show the proper love and respect for Eretz Yisrael, we committed sins towards Eretz Yisrael. Ki Golus Bavel Ayin Shana Hoyu B'Shvil Pegam Eretz Yisrael. The Babylonian exile for 70 years was because we did not treat Eretz Yisrael properly. As it says clearly in the Torah, that when will the Jews be evicted from Eretz Yisrael? Oz tirtzeh ha'oretz es shabsoiseho. When we will not perform the mitzvos hatluyos ba'oretz. When we will not observe the mitzvahs of Shemitah and Trumos and Maisros, those mitzvahs, will be evicted from Eretz Yisrael. Ki ikar hachnoas hora'ayin, because the main power to defeat the ra'ayin of our enemies, shehem kol ha'ayin umais, which is represented by all 70 nations, who al yedei Eretz Yisrael, is through the holiness and blessing of Eretz Yisrael. Umachmas shepogmu be'Eretz Yisrael, and because of the fact that we showed disrespect to Eretz Yisrael, v'loikimu shvisas oretz, we did not fulfill the mitzvahs of leaving the land fallow during the Shemitah year. Alkein hizgaber aleim hora ayin. This resulted in the power of ra'ayin coming against us. V'nischayvu golus ayin shona daika. And this is why we were exiled for 70 years specifically. That 70, that ayin, that number ayin, 70. V'alkein rotza Haman lezgaber bisman soif hagolus b'soif hashim shana. And this is why Haman wanted to attack and destroy the Jewish nation specifically at the end of this exile, at the end of the 70 years, be'eis shahayu rechoikim me'eretz Yisrael, when the Jewish people had already been out of their country for 70 years. We were distant from Eretz Yisrael. Lehizgaber aleim bera'ayin, to try to overpower us with this ra'ayin, livli lahanicham loshev l'Eretz Yisrael or l'beis hamikdash, to prevent us from ever coming back to Eretz Yisrael and to the Beis Hamikdash. Now watch how Rab Nasan Zal shows us how Eretz Yisrael is all about toivayin. Ki Eretz Yisrael u Beis Hamikdash heim bechinas toivayin. Because the land of Eretz Yisrael and the Beis Hamikdash are an example of Hashem's toivayin, the good eye. As it says clearly in the Chumash, we had this in last week's Parsha. Tomid Einei Hashem Elokecha ba. The eyes of Hashem are constantly focused on Eretz Yisrael. Ubebeis Hamikdash ksiv, and about the Beis Hamikdash, there's a pasuk that says, V'hoyu Einai v'libi sham. Hashem says, my eyes and my heart are there in the Beis Hamikdash. V'alkein ne'amar b'Haman, and this is why in the Megillah it tells us about Haman, v'chir'ois Haman es Mordechai, that when Haman saw Mordechai, he saw that Mordechai, he looked at him and saw that Mordechai is not bowing down to him. Rab Nasan Zal says, look at the wording. V'chir'ois, why does, it could have said when Mordechai didn't bow down. Why does it have to say that Haman saw this? V'chir'ois daika. And when he tells this over to his family, Haman says, B'chol eis asher ani roya es Mordechai. Every time I see Mordechai, I want to kill him, I want to tear him to pieces. Ani roya daika. Rab Nasan Zal says, look at the wording. I see, Bechinas ra'ayin, sherotza lehizgaber olav bera'ayin kanal. Paragraph Hey. Ki Haman amolek hu zuamas hanochosh hakadmoini. Because Haman, who comes from Amalek, he is actually the tumah of the original serpent, the original snake that enticed Adam and Chava to eat from the Eitz Hadas. As the Gemara says in Chulin, Haman min ha'Torah minayin. Where is Haman found in the Chumash? And the Gemara says, Shenemar hamin ho'etz asher tzivisicha. Did you eat from that tree that I instructed you not to eat from? And the word hamin is the letters Haman. Ki shoyresh hora'ayin hu bechinas hanochosh hakadmoini. Because the origin, the source of this power of ra'ayin dates back to this original serpent, Shahoya Orum, who was very shrewd. The Torah defines him, the Torah says, Hanochosh Shoya Orum. Shahoyoloi ayin ra ba'adam v'chava, and he looked at Adam and Chava with an evil eye, with jealousy. Kamay Shapirish Rashi, as Rashi says clearly in the Chumash, al pasuk vayihu shneim arumim, that Adam and Chava did not have any clothing at the time, no garments. Ha'adam ve'ishtoi v'lo yisbaishashu. And there was no shame or embarrassment at that time. So they are defined as arumim, and then the pasuk says, "V'hanochosh hoya orum mikol chayas hasodeh." The snake was also Orum. But here the word Orum means shrewd. Upirish Rashi points out, why is that same term used? Orum and Arumim. Rashi explains, quoting the Gemara, Shebishvil shera'a oisam oiskim betashmish le'in koil, because the snake, this serpent, saw Adam and Chava engaging in relations in an open way, where it was visible to all, le'in koil, niskane bohem, this serpent became jealous of them, vehesisam lechom eitz hadas, and convinced them to eat from the eitz hadas, ki noshim daitan kalos, because we know that women can be easily enticed and seduced. And what was his plan? Kedei sheyomus Adam. The Nachash thought Hashem had only said to Adam, on the day you eat from this, you'll die. So the Nachash wanted Adam to die, veyiso es Chava, and the snake would marry Chava. Ayin Sham, look over there in Rashi and the Chumash quoting the Gemara. And obviously there's a lot in Sifrei Kabbalah and Sifrei Chasidus about this. Ki koidem chet Adam HaRishon, now Rav Nasan is going to explain and clarify. Before the sin of Adam HaRishon, she'oz hayu shneim kedoshim vezakim betachlis hazakus. At that time, Adam and Chava were holy to the highest level of holiness and purity. They were creation of Hashem. They weren't born to human parents. They're called Yetzir Kapov Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is why they didn't require clothing at all. They were able to be completely unclothed. Ki lo hayu misyorim umizbaishim mikol einei habriyos mishum ra'ayin sheboilam. They did not have to be afraid of or ashamed of the eyes of everything in creation, of any power of ra'ayin, because they had no association whatsoever with evil. There was no contact at all whatsoever. They were pure holiness. Because the main reason why a person has to be afraid of this power of ra'ayin is that this ra'ayin should not inject a poison into the person, that the ra'ayin shouldn't inject poison, evil, into me. And we'll see soon, Rav Nasan will clarify what this means. And this is why, when a person feels that they're under attack by an enemy, by this power of ra'ayin, then the person has to try that he should be perfectly good. He should only have a positive eye. He shouldn't have any association with any negativity whatsoever. Vafilu al harosha biatzmoi, and even towards the Rasha, yihye malamed zchus. I have to try to be malamed zchus on that Rasha, shelo yihye einoi ro chas v'shalom afilu b'gedulas harosha, so that I should not be feeling any negativity, any negative feelings, any negative thoughts about the greatness of the Rasha, about the seeming success of the Rasha. Why is he so powerful? Why do I have to be afraid of him? Why does he have this wealth and power now? Even though it seems to me right now that this is unfair, this is injustice. Why in the world is Hashem allowing this Rasha to have power to the extent that I have to be afraid of him? Afal Pikein, despite all of that, Yilmad Olav Schus. We have to be Malamed Schus. We have to say, we know the Gemara tells us that when we see Rishoim in this world having good times, one of the reasons why that could be the case is because the Rasha might have done something good in his life, and Hashem doesn't want the Rasha to have pleasure in the world to come where it really counts. So Hashem gives him some success, some seeming joy and happiness in this world, only so that in the world of eternity, the Rasha will receive what he really deserves. That's one of the reasons, that's one of the explanations. V'yamin ba'Kadosh Baruch Hu. And I have to strive to believe in Hashem. Ki tzadik Hashem, that Hashem is righteous. Hashem is 100% just and fair. V'lo yeh b'liboy shum aknimius chas v'shalom al Hashem yisborach. And I should not allow myself to have negativity of doubt about Hashem chas v'shalom. Ki tzadik v'yosher hu yisborach. Because Hashem is 100% correct, right, just. V'oz, and then, bevadai yuchal lehinotzel mehora'ayin shel harosha. The person will definitely be saved from being harmed in any way whatsoever from the ra'ayin of this Rasha. As Rabbeinu Zal explains over there in chapter 55 in Likutei Moharan. Ki ha'ikar she'ha'odam tzorech lishmor atzmoi, because the main thing that a person has to watch themselves when there's this kind of situation, when there's a powerful Rasha or Rishoim that are putting the Jewish people in danger, the most important thing at that time for us to focus on is that ra'ayin of the Rasha shouldn't affect me in any way. Ki akminius halev, because this crookedness in the heart, dahainu roya halev, which means an evil in the heart, sheboloi al datoi chas v'shalom eze hiro chas v'shalom achar ma'aseh Hashem yisborach, where a person starts doubting Hashem, doubting, why did Hashem do this? Why did Hashem make a Holocaust? Why is Hashem giving us corona now? Why are we suffering financial struggles? Why are there health problems? Al shehu yisborach noisen kol hagedula v'akoved v'ashirus loivdei kechovim v'harishoim v'misnagdem al emes. Regarding the fact that Hashem is giving all the greatness and power and respect and wealth to the goyim, to the other nations, v'harishoim, and to evil people, v'hamisnagdim al emes, and to those people who oppose the truth, v'hatzadikim v'haksherim heimunachim bebizoyoin b'shiftus godol ba'anius v'dachkus. Whereas the tzadikim and the religious people, they are lying in shame, in financial pressure and struggle. Zeh hahirur chas v'shalom, that type of thought, where a person starts questioning why this isn't fair, that's actually a form of this evil eye. Ki ra'ayin tolui beroya halev, because Rabbeinu Zal over there in Likutei Moharan shows that these two go together. Ra'ayin, an evil eye, and this type of negative thoughts in the heart. Rabbeinu Zal quotes the Zohar Kodesh, which says, Ki shuraino de'ena balibotalia. The vision of the eye, the ability of the eye to process things correctly is dependent on the heart. There's a very direct connection between the two. I didn't see this, but just thinking as we're learning this, we know that the eyes usually represent Chachma. It says by Adam and Chava, Vatipokachno einei shnehem, their eyes were opened. And Rashi says there with Chachma. Pikeach means a Chacham. And the heart is Bina, Ulavava Yovin. And we know that Chachma and Bina are referred to as Train, Rei, and Deloi Misparshin. Two friends that are inseparable. These two go together. We know the Gemara says, the eye sees, the heart desires, and then the rest of the body executes the action. So we see the incredible, powerful kesher between these two. The eye, and Rabbeinu Zal there in Likutei Moharan says that the ra'ayin is a direct result of the roya halev. So therefore we see that the evil in the heart, which evil? Specifically, dahainu akminius halev, this crookedness, shemaharer achar Hashem yisborach chas v'shalom, where a person is second-guessing Hashem, we're thinking negative thoughts about Hashem, that is an expression of this ra'ai and this evil eye. Therefore, ha'ikar, the most important thing is, שהאדם צריך לשמור עצמו שלא יסחס בו הרעים. דהיינו שלא יגיע לו חס ושלום איזה צד מחשבה והרהור אחר מעשי השם יתברך. That I shouldn't allow any iota of doubt or questioning Hashem, the actions of Hashem, chas v'shalom, to affect me. Rak, but rather, lahamin be'emuna shlema u'beyishras leiv, but rather to believe with 100% pure faith and with a smooth heart, ki tzadik Hashem b'chol derochav, that Hashem is 100% correct and right with everything He does. And therefore, when we engage the Rasha, we have to be malamed schus somehow on him, kidei lehinotzel mira einoi, in order to be saved from being harmed by his power of ra'ayin. Ki al yidei limud schus al harasha zoichen lirois tzidkas Hashem yisborach. Because by being malamed schus on the Rasha, that will enable us to see the righteousness of Hashem, v'nis yasher liboy me'akminius, and the heart will be smooth from any type of crookedness. V'zoiche le'emuna v'letfila, and the person will be zoiche to pure faith and to really effective tefillah. As Rabbeinu Zal explains very clearly in Likutei Moharan in chapter 55, which this halacha is based on. Ki zehu ha'ikar. Rav Nasan Zal is reiterating he really wants us to understand this and absorb this, because this is the most important thing when we find ourselves in this type of situation. Sheha'adam bi'atzma yi'anitzol meharayin, that the person should be saved from the ra'ayin, shelo yisachis bo chas v'shom, that it shouldn't attach itself to us. Now Rav Nasan Zal is going to show how the entire Torah, the entire Yiddishkeit, is all about the eyes. Ki klal kol haTorah kula hu bechinas einayim dikdusha, because the entire Torah is really all about the holiness of the eyes. Bechinas toivayin, a good eye. Let's start from the beginning. The opening word of the Torah, the word Bereshis. The Tikkunei Zohar says, Tamon Reishis, Tamon Bas. The Tikkunei Zohar says that the word Bereshis is comprised of two words, Roshei, Reish Aleph Shin Yud, and Bas. The Zohar HaKodesh says the word Roshei is used about the three forefathers of the Jewish people. There's a pasuk, Eile Roshei Beis Avoisam. The real heads are Avram, Yitzchok, Yaakov. So the word Roshei refers to the three Avos. Now the three Avos, the Zohar HaKodesh says, corresponds to the three colored rings of the eye. Tlas Gavnen De'ena, that the eye is comprised of three colors, and the Bas Ayin, the pupil of the eye, the black dot in the middle. So the word Bereshis is Roshei Bas. Roshei is the three, referring to the three colored rings of the eye. Bas is the Bas Ayin, the pupil of the eye. Shehem Tlas Gavnen De'ena Ubas Ayin. So that's the opening word of the Torah. What are the closing words of the Torah? The last three words in the Torah are Le'enei Kol Yisrael, referring to the miracles and the great things that Moshe Rabbeinu performed before the eyes of the entire Jewish nation. Ki Iker Klal Kol HaTorah VaHaMitzvos, because Rav Nasan Zal says if we want to summarize the entire Torah and all of its mitzvos, Hu livli leile chas v'shalom achar shrirus liboy hora umare einov. It's all about a Jew striving not to follow the desires of our heart and what our eyes see. K'may shekosuf, as it says, v'lo yisasuru acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem. Don't turn away from Hashem by following your heart and your eyes. Ki ha'ayin royeh v'halev chomed, because the Gemara says clearly, the eye sees and the heart desires. V'chol hatayvos v'hirhurim, and all of the wrong type of desires and all the wrong types of thoughts are all initiated by the eye seeing. Ki ha'ayin royeh v'halev chomed, as the Gemara says, the eye, step one is the eye sees, step two is the heart desires. Kulam he mebechinas hara'ayin. It's all coming from that place called Ra'ayin. Esav came to attack Yaakov Avinu with 400 men. 400 is Bigimatria Ra'ayin. Whereas Yaakov Avinu, we said, is the Toivayin. Yaakov Avinu lived 17 years in Egypt, 130 years in Eretz Yisrael. 17 is Toiv, and the word Ayin, Ayin Yud Nun, is 130. This is the battle between Esav and Yaakov. Every single one of us has to have pity on ourselves. V'lihiyos oitzein einov me'ra'os bara. As the pasuk says, close your eyes from looking at evil. V'listoim einov me'chezu dahayalma legamri. And to close our eyes from being enticed by all the foolishness, all the wrong things that are being presented to us in this world. L'salek u'levatel achizas sorayim imenu, and thereby remove completely and eliminate the power of ra'ayin from us umigvuloy, and from our boundary legamri, completely. Rak sheyeh toivayin, but rather that I should be in the category of toivayin. Livli lahabit be'enov rak betoira v'avoida, and to focus and direct my eyes only on the Torah and serving Hashem. Kamei as it says clearly in a pasuk, Einecha lenoichach yabitu. Your eyes should look forward. Look at Hashem. Don't look to the sides. Don't get distracted by the silly distractions of this materialistic world. Va'afapecha yaishiru negdecha. Not to be distracted by all the nonsense of this world. As David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Gal Einai, Hashem, open up my eyes, va'abito niflois mitorasecha, and allow me to see the wonders of your Torah. Uchsiv, and there's another pasuk that says, Einai tomid el Hashem. My eyes are constantly focused and directed towards Hashem. Rav Nasan Zal just did an incredible job of showing us what Yiddishkeit, how the entire Yiddishkeit is focused on this issue of the eyes. The good eye versus the bad eye. The toivayin versus the ra'ayin. Yaakov Avinu, who's called Bechir Sheba'avos, the choicest of all three forefathers. He's a composite of Avram, Yitzchok, Yaakov. He is Emes. He is the Torah. Versus Esav. Amalek, Haman, all of our adversaries who are referred to as this Bechina of Ra'ayin, Roya Halev. And it's all about this connection between the eyes and the heart. We'll continue Mi'etz Hashem in the next shir. Rav Nasan Zal is going to clarify further the topic of Adam Rishon and Chava and the whole sin of the Eitz Hadas. Rav Nasan Zal is going to make it much clearer in the next paragraph, and then go on to the mitzvah of tzitzis and further clarification about Haman and the whole holiday of Purim. Wishing everybody a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and refuos and yeshuos for all those that need it, all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rav Nasan.
Sure. All the best.
Rabbi.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Shkoyach to all of you, all of us.